Super excited to share today. And a lot of the stuff that I'm sharing, I haven't ever shared in this condensed form. Usually it's throughout an author's life cycle, we will share the information on like, okay, now you're at this step, now you're at this step, now you're at this step. But what I've been seeing a lot is that a lot of people already know that they want to publish a book. Their book is already ready, but when it hits the shelves, it ends up being dead. And what I mean by a dead book is not that the book isn't full of life, because I know that they all are, especially when they're God inspired, but it's not moving. It's not getting off of the shelf. People aren't learning about it. And often, because of the buyer cycle of a book, the stat for that, in case you haven't heard me share this before, is that the average book, the average author will only sell 2,000 copies in the life cycle of its book. So it could be 30 years old and only 2,000 copies have been sold. The typical year is 250 for the first year that the book is. And so imagine every year after that, there's only a handful of books that are being sold. And as a publishing house, I'm not okay with that, especially knowing that it's intentional to get the hands because of the word of God being infused through people's testimonies, wanting that to help people break chains. And so I'd love to know from you all, where are you in the book cycle at this point? Are you writing? Are you completed? Are you published? And now you're looking to just move it? Are you marketing? I'd love to hear. You can drop it in the chat or you can open up your mic. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, I am outlining.
Amazing. That's a great spot to be in. Very fun, actually.
Yes.
Exciting. Who else?
I was invited to contribute. Excuse me, I have a cold, so
No
I
worries.
apologize. Excuse me, contribute to a book by another author. There are 9 of us contributing.
Awesome.
At
Okay.
the end of the year.
Awesome.
And so now, and I've not published before. I am working on a devotion book of my own that's probably a year away from completion.
Great.
But the author of this book is now talking to the contributors about marketing and social media. And because I've not done it before, I don't know where to begin. So when I saw your email, I thought, okay, this is pretty darn timely.
Yes, I'm glad. And hopefully you can even bring some of the ideas to the author cohort so that they can help move it collectively, especially if somebody has a strength in an area where another person has a strength in something different. And you'll see that as we go through today. There are going to be people who are just really good at one particular way of moving the book, but this is giving exposure to lots of different ideas. So you can always position someone. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I ask just what, about how long does this last?
It's usually about an hour and 15 minutes. And the Q&A can sometimes last into that hour and a half time frame. But generally I like to leave space so people can ask questions.
Okay, if I do have to duck out, I'm not being rude. I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that.
I appreciate you. No problem.
Sneaking out of work.
Good for you. All right. I've got Lydia, who's still writing in faith. I've got Kelly, who is outlined and audio dictating because I don't like writing. I love this, Kelly. So many people who have so much to say, right? But they aren't actually taking that next step because they just don't like to write. I've had several people ask me if I wanted to be their ghostwriter. And I'm like, no, I have so many books in queue in my own brain. I don't want to ghostwrite your book, but you're talkers and you're a talker, you can dictate, which is amazing. 2 anthologies published. Go April. A children's book is about 2 to 4 weeks from hitting the Amazon shelves. Fun. And another anthology publishing in February, and a solo series that she is writing. She is a writer for sure and a speaker. So April, I'm excited for you to be here. And then I know, Christina, you came in maybe after the question. There you are, on my 3rd anthology I was going to share for you because I know, and writing your solo book. So thanks everybody for sharing. I'm excited about this. It's really going to serve you for the forethought, especially since lots of you are in writing phase. But for those who are already published, you don't want to lose traction or momentum on your book. Even these cohort books that you're speaking to, that some of you guys are a part of or about to be a part of, a lot of times if like the lead author, myself included, is on to their next project, the rest of the authors are just like, okay, well, I guess my job is done. And I'm like, no, like your job is just getting started. This is meant to be a resource for you as well as a resource to all of those who receive it. And so just processing through, how do you want to actually implement this into your routine, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. It's just, we want to get it in the forefront of everyone. So let's pray first and then we'll jump right in. God, I thank you so much I thank you for this group of people here today who are just eager to share your good news, to share your word through their testimonies, God, through the stories that you've laid on their heart. I just pray that you catalyze this conversation so that it can hit more shelves, so that it can be in the hands of more people, so that it can truly transform hearts and inspire hope and ultimately get them connected to you, Lord. That is our heart of hearts in all that we do, but the work of our hands, with our thoughts, with our mouth, with our vocal piece, with our pens, with our computers, Lord. And we just ask that today would be an unlock for people to be able to truly go the extra distance and to not give up on something just because it feels like it's difficult or it feels like it's outside of their thought pattern or their ability from a marketing lens, God. We know social media can be inundating. And so I'm just grateful that there's other ways that you've created that allow us to truly just catalyze messages. That's what we're here for, is for the messengers, to turn them into movements. And Lord, I thank you that you are in the midst of their writing. I thank you in the areas where there might be roadblocks or hindrances or distractions, Lord, that you would just carve out sacred space, that you would meet them at their computers, that you would meet them on their writing retreats, that you would meet them in the moments that they're journaling or dictating, God, and it would be a Holy Spirit inspired moment. God, that they would know that it is you and they would be certain of its goodness, because everything you touch, Lord, is so good, so very good. And that is just exactly what you call us as your children. And so we just love that. We sit in that. We bask in that, knowing that we're worthy of your love, God, and you're worthy of all of our devotion. In your mighty name, amen. So good. Always so centering. All right, let me share this screen and get us going. For those who have not been on a virtual event before, if you have any questions, I'm hoping that I already have pre-thought them out to respond to you. But if not, at any point you can drop them in the chat. I'm actively watching it. And if it resonates for that moment, I will answer it. If it doesn't resonate for that moment, because I have a slide coming up about it, just hold tight. I'll make sure that I filter through all of them so nobody's questions are lost. And hi, Jennifer, I saw you pop in. Good to see you. All right, let's get going. As I mentioned, even in prayer, the coolest part about this particular session is that it's about moving your books from shelves to souls, but the asterisk is the most important part: without selling your soul on social media. Who has been told that the only marketing tactics exist on social, and you don't feel like there's any ability to do anything else, or you have a really small following, so you feel completely ill-equipped or unable to move your 300 books that potentially that particular cohort group needs you to move, or we want to get you past your own individual milestones of being in the top 1% as an author to sell past that 250 in year one. These are ways that we're going to do it, and without it being something that you're linked to social media. I personally am not a social media coach. I'm actually really not a social media fan, other than the fact that I do know that we can touch hearts across the nation by being a light in what can be a really dark space. I just feel like it's limiting in some regard, and there are people out there who that's just not their traction point. Some of my authors, for instance, have huge corporations that they're a part of, tens of thousands of people, and they're not following them on social. Or they have a really huge LinkedIn space because they've been in corporate for 3 decades, but they have 100 followers on their Instagram. So it doesn't make one more significant than the other. It just makes them different. And I want this to be able to give you an understanding that there are way more opportunities to get your book in people's hands. So let's talk endorsements, the foreword, and the afterword. So these are critical elements of your book for a plethora of different reasons. When you're thinking through all of the people that could potentially contribute to your book, some of them might have time, but they don't have finances. Some of them might have finances, but they don't have time. Some of them might have amazing words, but they don't have time. And so you want to go to them and you want to know, before they say yes or no, you want to curate something that is specific to that particular person based on what you do know about them. For instance, one of our current authors right now has been pitching endorsement opportunities for her book, and she knows that these people are like really busy. I hate that word. I think it's a cuss word. We don't use it in our house, but they're intentionally living with zero time between their sessions. Okay. And in that midst, she knew, gosh, they're not going to sit down. They're not going to read my introduction or my first 3 chapters. They're not going to have an opportunity to do so. So let me send them the synopsis of the book, and let me actually pre-script the endorsement and just get their approval. Different than typical, right? But if you're doing the legwork for them and they're like, yeah, I 100% can endorse that and agree with it, and I'm partnering with you, because most endorsements are character witnesses. Let me say that again. Most endorsements are character witnesses. And therefore, if they know you, it's a lot easier for them to write an endorsement without having to read your front to back cover. A lot of people are not going to write a tiny little endorsement just to read your book. And so you have to be mindful of who you're asking and presenting them with an opportunity that's pretty hard to say no. The next thing is the afterword or the forward. Either of these can be done, or both. We have some pieces that both are happening, and there's intentional reasons why. One, they might be queuing up people for the next book, and or they have like a tail end period or mic drop that they want to make, which is why they would position it as an afterword versus a forward. But when you're asking these people, they do have time, they do have capacity, they do have a shared interest in the movement of your book. They have shared interest in the message behind your book. And so, for instance, if you're doing something like our previous author who is in the bullying realm and producing understanding of identity and hope in this space of bullying, she was able to bring in, actually I wrote that forward, but she was able to additionally bring in a counselor who read through the entire book, endorsed the book, and was also a part of her virtual launch party. And so think of someone who could partner that would actually amplify the legitimacy behind your message. And it might be a stranger in that regard. And that's okay. Some people are totally okay with doing that. We get pitched endorsements often and or forwards or introductions often. Most often mine are either a part of our publishing house and therefore it's an element connected to that, or they're paying me outright to go ahead and write it so that they know they can have access to my community in the process. So some people will require a payment, some people won't, just to give you some understanding of that. Any other questions on endorsements, forwards, or afterwards? Key elements for usage of endorsements is you putting it on the back or the front of your book. So if it is just a killer person that you're like, man, this person has traction, this person has a following way larger than mine who's willing to do this, you want to put that endorsement. It doesn't have to be the entire endorsement. It could just be 4 words that they said about it, but then their name is on the cover. My Always Becoming book has Hope Carpenter, who has a megachurch East and West Coast, right? And so we have a very shared storyline. And so she was more than happy to endorse my book. Another one has a quote actually by Oprah, and I did not have to get that approved to use Oprah's name. Some people are famous enough that they're like, yeah, you can, my name is accessible to everyone. It's kind of a household thought. So think about different things like that that you would be willing to put on your book and use those. And then additionally, being able to create content from them. So you can create an email thread just about the relationship of that endorser. You can create social just around the relationship of that endorser, afterward or forward person. You can amplify your afterward or forward person by having them on a podcast or co-writing something different together to amplify the book's concept. Got some ideas? Oh, I keep seeing look, I got henna done at our launch party in New York City this past week. And I'm like looking, oh, wow, I thought I had stuff on my hand from cleaning earlier. It's still pretty. All right, jump into the next one. Again, if you have any questions as we're going forth, feel free to add it to the chat. Okay, next is your media kit, your press release, and your TV and magazine spaces. And this is where those will be sent. Media kits these days are phenomenally accessible, and you can get them in Canva. If you literally go in Canva, especially the pro account, which I highly recommend, you just type in media kit and you're gonna get a bunch of examples just like this person. Our media kits are multiple pages, and when we are inside of either a cohort, we create the media kit and everyone can pretty much just drag and drop their images. And if you're a singular author, we design your media kit for you. The reason being is a lot of times numbers connected to maybe your influence isn't something you could even put out there because you're like, I'm just getting started. I don't really have, a notable 10,000 person email list or a notable followership. followership. And so we curate a different social authority by asking you questions in order to understand, okay, what traction have you had in this particular area? An example could be, let's say you're talking about one of our people is going through like a parenting, an interesting parenting scenario. And if I was to ask like, how long have you been studying this particular area as a parent? She has 2 decades of education in this particular parent situation. And so that's notable, right? That's way more than 10,000 hours, and 10,000 hours makes you an expert. So thinking through what makes you an expert in this field, excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. And how can you then tweak in your media kit numbers to enhance the readership of what it is that they're coming to you for and learning about? Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so for the press releases are different than media kits, but they can be sent together. A media kit alongside a press release can really enhance. However, at the end of the day, TV specifically, stations and their vetters for editors and contributing editors, they are not looking through every 6 pages of your media kit. So the shorter, more condensed versions with the press release is going to be more accessible. And I'm going to talk to you in a couple of slides about like, how do you send those and what would be the best way to do that? But honestly, if you go to any of the local stations, even some of the bigger stations, every single one, just like the magazine contributions, they're listed right there at the footer of their page. So let's just go to, this is just one that's coming off mine. Hopefully it's there when I'm giving the example because I'm not 100% sure. Let me see. Da, 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 da. Oh, perfect. Okay. So the thing that came to mind was Better Homes and Gardens. And so I don't even get magazines, but you can do their online access is great. So if I went to Better Homes and Gardens and then I click contact and it threw me over here and it says press inquiries right here. So you would just click this and that's how you get access to them. So there's not, it's not rocket science. And I think a lot of people think that it is, and it hinders them from ever doing it because they're like, I don't know how to get on USA Today. Well, if you go to USA Today and you go down to the bottom, it's going to be the exact same thing. And you're going to be able to have direct access to the people who are skimming these things through. With that being said, please don't give up on the first try. Please reach out with them with a different angle every single month. You've already done the hard work of creating the press release and creating your media kit. Now you just have to be annoying enough that they say, who is this person? Kelly keeps emailing me. I need to open her email. And then it's the 3rd time, it's the 4th time, it's the 12th time before you actually get that. The cool thing about a book is it's never old. Okay, it could be 3 years old, it could be 15 years old, especially knowing that there are things that are happening in today's ecosphere and today's culture, and we're going to talk about that momentarily, that it directly applies to. Your sole goal in that is to position it with what's going on. So position it to everything that's hot topic, and we're going to get to it. But processing that TV and magazines, that's literally their job, is to find you. They want content. They need content. Their show is premised off of it. That's why sometimes you'll watch a show and you're like, who is this person? How did they get on the show? This doesn't have any relevancy. Well, it's because they have to have content. They have to fill the air. They have to fill their time. They have to fill their spreads. And we want you to be those people. So it's an easy email pitch. I've never done any direct calls. And so I know that that's also an option. And then you can say, okay, can I send an email to the right person in your particular department that would be interested in this? And that can be for the media kit press release send. Make sense? Cool. Any questions about that particularly?
I do have a question. Is there a different way to position a book that is like a faith-based book? Because I'm thinking of mine, and while it can be applicable to women all around the world,
Yes.
I want to I'm very bold in my faith, but I also want to be diplomatic and position it so that everybody can receive the message that's in it.
Yes. And this can be a challenge if the title is already very faith forward. and or the back of the book is already faith forward. And so when we are consulting with any of our authors, this is something we're conscious of. And so even though the book title might be Faith in the Flames, we're thinking of a subtitle that would be connected to somebody, because faith is an overarching word, right? God even is an overarching word. We just know our God and we know what our faith means. So just being really mindful of that when you're curating it. Is there a chunk of information inside of it that's curated specifically to identity, or specifically to self-control, or specifically to trauma? And I'm sure everybody could probably shake their head and be like, yep, most of my story has those things kind of in it. And so you pluck out the cultural context of what it is that you're trying to position it for. And it just so happens that this is the title of the book. Does that help? Cool. Awesome. All right, on to the next. Great, good question. All right. Oh, that's me. Like, what's that sound? Okay, I'm like, wow, I'm talking on here. All right, so processing speaking engagements and podcasts. These are obviously ways that you can use the book to gain access or gain entrance or gain invitation to your book and your book's exposure, but also to yourself. Because how many of you guys want to have more books? Have more books in queue? Yeah, like you just want to write. I just want to write for the rest of my days. I want to write. And so you want people to not only be connected to the book, you also want them to be connected to you as the author. And so speaking engagements are my favorite way of getting my name out from just a flat 2D print and becoming a 3D, I always say 4D experience, because I love to have things be that energetic and experiential opportunity. And so how can you turn your book into that? So thinking through, just like I said before with the media, is what are the topics? This is generally on the back of your book. So if I pulled any of our books and I look at the topic sections that are inside already on the back cover that someone would be able to curate out, identity discovery, setting boundaries, obliterating shame, reclaiming your body image, mental health breakthroughs, overcoming sexual trauma. Okay, that's probably 8 different conferences right there that I could go through and search these types of retreats, these types of conferences, these types of podcasts, and I now can pitch my book and my coming in as the educator, the experiential teacher around that. So your topics, which are the concepts of your book, they very well could be the chapter titles of your book or the through line to your book. They matter. So More Than Enough has more than your past, more than your religion, more than your body, more than your job, more than a wife, more than a mom. Obviously, women's conferences, church groups, but also more than your body. Let's talk about physical fitness. Let's talk about health when it comes to your body. Let's talk about entrepreneurs when it's your job, or corporate women in corporate, or C-suite women in corporate. More than your past, it could be a trauma recovery experience. So I could sit down with you and we could brainstorm all of the different avenues that your books now become accessible based on the topics that are inside of them. Sometimes you want to be so strategic in presenting that in the forefront of your book rather than it being an afterthought. And that's why obviously having it on your book, it's on the back, it's a forethought, but additionally in your marketing experiences is to be able to partner with people, couple with people in one small topic. It might just be one chapter of your book, but those speaking engagements and podcasts will allow it to amplify the message and more people to get their hands on the whole identity of the book rather than just that one particular topic. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, great. One thing about speaking engagements, I will give you a little fun fact and trick as a speaker. They might not be looking for the ability to pay. They might not have a budget, right, in order to bring you in as a speaker. How many of you guys have gotten that ask before? Yep. They're like, we want you to come, but we don't have a budget. You're like, oh, lovely. Thank you. I guess I'll speak for free again. The book is a way to actually create an invoice. And what I mean by that, and every single time, by the way, when we had our speaker training, you learned this already, but I'll give a little sneak peek for it now. You should always be sending an invoice, even if you're going for free. It's a write-off. You should always be sending an invoice, even if you're going for free, of the cost that you generally are as a speaker. Okay. Even if you're going for free, and you just put it down as a discount and contribution ministry, whatever that looks like to you. But the same thing can be true with your book. So you can say, oh, okay, so if you don't have a budget for me to come speak, would you be willing to have my book in everyone's chair or at everyone's table seating or in all of the swag bags so that everyone has access to the book, and I'll give it to you for my author cost, and instead of them having to buy it online? This would then put money back into your pocket, but more so importantly, even if it was not going to break even, especially if you're flying and getting a hotel, it could be a couple $100s, but it does allow your message to get in more hands, because the likelihood that someone comes to hear you speak for the first time and you connect with them on a deep enough message that they're going to also invest, let's say it's $20 on Amazon to get your book, it's so sparse because people have already made an investment to be in that room that they're not also going to convert and pay more money to someone that they just met. And so if it's already in their hand, that's your goal. How can I get this book in their hand without them having to pay, but it's a part of their ticket, right? And so when people are in the development phase for anything, you want to be the pitch to say, I would love to be a resource to your community. Here's an asset. Here's a gift that we could provide. I'll pay half if you pay half. And let's say you're getting your bulk order for your book. On average, books are costing between $450 to $650, depending on how you're getting it printed. And you charge $12 a book. You're making that, but it's also half off of Amazon. So they feel like they're getting a deal. You're getting a little bit off the top, and your book is getting into everybody's hands. Cool. Fun fact. Yeah, go ahead, Carla.
I have a question about your fun fact.
Okay, let's hear.
Okay, I'm sorry. This is so interesting to me. So, for a conference, let's say that doesn't have the budget to pay you, and you're able to negotiate to get your book in there, even if you gave it away for free, would it be beneficial to maybe also ask to have a table in the back where you can invite people to come so that you can talk to them one-on-one?
100%.
Okay.
Yes.
I
think my speaking training one was maybe a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. It's inside of our portal though. And I go into all of the ways to pitch being in the room. And yeah, definitely speaking and having a booth is highly recommended.
Can you just go through that again real quick? I'll call it the math.
Yes.
I'm very fascinated by that, and I would have never considered that. So are you saying that the host might include the author cost of the book, like in the registration fee?
Correct.
So
Correct.
It doesn't have to come out of their budget. The individuals essentially have paid for it, but
yes,
kind of looks like they're getting it for free.
Yes.
Our costs have been offset, and we're getting our book out there.
Correct.
Okay.
The tricky part of that, at least it has been for us, is generally the tickets are already out to the public when they're reaching out for us to come as either a sponsor or a speaker, which kind of sounds bizarre, but it's generally how it works. So just being mindful that if you can get in front of them offering the ticket, that's a perfect way to pitch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I wrap my head around that.
You're on it. You got it. All right. And then also just alluding to the podcast piece, obviously same thing, knowing your topics, being able to pitch the book to them, being able to share it to their community. You can always offer a podcast affiliate link, meaning let's say I'm on Christina's podcast and it's, tamraandress.book/Christina, or a promo code. Type in Christina10 and get 10% off or $10 off the book. That requires you to have a system set up because obviously buying through Amazon isn't going to allow you to do that, and you're not going to know who buys what when, which is why it's also important down the road to get your books on a hosted site of your own so that you can send signed copies, you can send little swag editions with the book, and you can do something like I'm talking about now, which is sending out those affiliate links.
So you can do that on a website. Like I have a website. It's pretty basic. It's down right now because it's undergoing some changes.
Sure.
But I can add something like that to my website.
You can add your book to your site like you would on a shop page, and you can put it at your own price, and you can include signed copy. Make sure when you're doing mailers to anyone that you're going to the shipping place and telling them that this is media inside of your envelope, because that's a flat rate shipping cost rather than it being all over the map. No matter where you are in the United States, media costs the exact same.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do you
All right.
recommend like a fancy brand name? Like, so April and I now have more than one book. And so it's like, do you put that under your, existing website? Do you create a new website to have just this new identity? I'm struggling with that a
Yeah,
little
that's
bit.
a good thought. Are you thinking about from your business, from Sweet Dreams to
Mhm.
having the books on there? Well, when you go to like onto Sweet Dreams site, I would imagine that there's probably an About Us
Yep.
page about you guys. You could link it. It could be something that's featured on the bottom there. It could also be linked through that page. It could also just be a header element of get to know the founder, and you have your own individual Christina page. I think down the road, Christina, it's going to be advantageous for you to have your own branded site
Yeah.
for you as the brand. So I have my Tamra Andress site, and then my business is Fit and Faith Media, right? Our founder, my nonprofit, doesn't have any of this stuff, but it has Meet the Founder, and then you go to Tamra Andress.
Okay.
That makes sense. So it's kind of like an
Yep.
ecosystem for them.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could do a fun thing on the Lavender site where the book comes with, in a sense, a specific oil or a specific candle that you want to have. So there's like co-branding, which we're going to talk about branding here momentarily. So it doesn't feel like it's off the wall. Like, why is this book in their shop? It's more
Right.
just like, do you want a relaxing night as a woman? Do you just need a refreshment? And it's like a bubble bath kit thing that goes with the More Than Enough book.
Okay.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, on to the next. Any other questions in that one? Cool. Okay, so I kind of just talked about this, but unique event pitching. Beyond just having the booth that Kelly mentioned, some of the things that you might also want to do is you could be the photo booth sponsor for the conference, okay? Let's say your book, like our Joyful Entrepreneur, makes for a really great, easy photo booth because it's going to be super colorful and fun, and it's going to be inventive for people to come up. You might have a question that you're asking every single person when they come up that is also gaining you content, and then they get to take a picture in front of it. Or you get to have a table of the books next to it and they're holding the book. There's so many different ways that it could be featured, and you just have to process through, how does this fit into their particular mission? Another unique thing that I saw at a conference recently, which I loved, was this podcaster. She was not an author, but I would do it as an author. She was the coffee sponsor for the morning. So everybody could come an hour early, and she was there as a podcaster just saying, hey, I'll buy your coffee if you follow my show. All right, now you're not going to say I'll buy your coffee if you buy my book, because that's a pretty big variation and exchange. But you could do, I'm giving away free bookmarks and if for everybody who scans this, and they can't probably leave a review unless they bought it, but follows you on social. And then, or the best thing of all things in any type of marketing is to get their email. So sign up for my email list and I'll buy your coffee this morning. Yes, yes, more yes. Okay. So you could spend, $1,500, maybe less than that, and you are the main coffee sponsor, and you're the first person that they're meeting that morning. You're making them happy because you're making them caffeinated, and you're also getting your book publicity. Makes sense? Cool. I won't go too far into the event one because I told you I've done this one before, but I wanted to throw it in from a book lens, some things that you could do. All right, this is one that most people often forget, and this is just knowing the calendar. What I mean by knowing the calendar is not your calendar, but the calendar at large. What is society doing at this moment in time that a lot of people are already aware of, that you now fit into the conversation because you're positioning your book and yourself and your voice and your message earlier rather than just, oh, it's Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Like that does not help any book sales because everybody and their mother is posting happy Thanksgiving. So how does Kelly on November 1st go into a gratitude practice with her book or a thankfulness experience with her book? And her book is in all of these destinations around town of things that she's thankful for. And people are like, oh, wow, I love this. And it's not too much because remember, only 1 to 3% of people on social media see your content anyway. But if you are doing this from an email marketing perspective, you could do this as a challenge, right? We want to come up with 5 ways this month. Every Monday is a Thankfulness Monday. That's a terrible non-alliteration example, but you catch my drift. Okay. But there are so many other calendars beyond just the main calendar because not everybody celebrates the same things that we do. And so if you go onto Google and you just say like, fun daily celebrations, daily holidays, I'll just do it for you now. So you can see that I'm not just making this up. It's amazing. Daily holiday calendar. National Day calendar. Here we go. So today is November, what is today? November 26th or something like that. Well, let's just go to a random one. November 15th is National Philanthropy Day. November 15th is also National Clean Out Your Refrigerator Day. Maybe your book is sitting in the refrigerator and you're cleaning it out and voila, there's a book there too. You guys get to create content this way, no matter what, because there's an idea for you every single day. National Bundt Day, National Spicy Hermit Cookie Day. I don't even know what that is. National Raisin Bran Cereal Day. Make your book cover on that. You can move so much more when people are like, wow, that's punny, right? There's a pun connected to the way that you're doing it, and it doesn't look as self-serving. So I just encourage you to get these things out. If you're like, yes, absolutely, I'm celebrating National Spicy Guacamole Day with my book and some guac and chips. That's me in a bathtub. And that's phenomenal, right? And so you have to get ahead of it by literally go get a cheap dollar calendar and write these things in and then think, how am I going to position my book to be a part of this message? And it's going to make people smile. And I didn't even know it was this particular guacamole day. Well, now you do. Go to Mexican. Thank you and enjoy. Questions? Thoughts? Giving you some ideas? Good. Today is National Cake Day. See? There you go.
I would not have thought of that in a million years. That's awesome.
Super simple, right? And it really just helps you. You have fun doing it too. You really do. So when people say, I don't know what to talk about, I'm like, well, don't talk about you and stop talking about your book from that lens. Partner your book with what's already happening. And that makes it so much easier and more fun and unforgettable. Great. All right, on to the next. Let me mention one more thing about the calendar because nobody does this, but I am, actually, do I already talk about it? I do. I'm going to hold my mouth. I'm going to hold my tongue. Okay, I think I'm good to go on to the next one. I have so many other ideas running through my brain right now. All right, next one is promotional companion products. So our More Than Enough book did this really well. I love it so much. We did jackets. So we did upcycled jean jackets for all of our authors and sold them out to the public. And they flew off the shelf at a conference that we were at, which was the same conference that we were doing the book launch at She Speaks in July. And so it just allowed there to be this additional piece of like, I want that book. Oh, and I want that because I connect to the message. And so what is something that you could create that allows people to connect to the message and become a part of the brand, a part of the message, a part of the movement? I teach this other marketing funnel, which is an hourglass funnel, unlike what everybody else teaches in the industry, specifically from a business coaching perspective. And I always teach people, if you can have somebody become a name bearer, this is in the bottom portion of the hourglass, a name bearer for your book, your message, your brand, man, you have gone the extra mile. I have a girlfriend who just sent me a sweatshirt and it says, I'm God's ferocious babe on it. And it has her initials on the sleeve. Do you think there's not one moment when I'm wearing that sweatshirt throughout my day that she is not thought of, and that I'm not thinking of how I could partner with her, what I want to do with her next, what I want to buy from her next? Yes. Okay, we are known for our earrings over at Fit and Faith. Even though we have guys, they get to gift it to their wives. And so people are always like, what's your new earring set that you guys got going on this season? I want them. I'm like, cool, I'll see you at the next event. We'll be passing them out. And so what is that thing that's for you? That's a promotional companion product. If it has to do with your book, maybe it's a specific Bible highlighter, maybe it's a bookmark, maybe it's a XYZ you insert. The other thing that we did was we actually created a devotional study guide to go along with the book, which was a lot more work than I was anticipating. At the moment that the book launch was happening, the Lord dropped this in. And we also partnered with a church here that launched the book with us. And so there was under 100, but an amazing group of people at a local church here. And they actually were running this as a 12-week series while the book was coming out. And so just to be able to, as many of the authors, there was about 3 of us that lived here locally, we got to go and actually now have a built-in public speaking experience with this. We got to have connections in our local community. We got to serve the local church out of this devotional, which they would have otherwise never picked up this book as the choice. And they were like, this is amazing that the local author publishing house is right here and that they get to come in person. Because typically churches just have the video screen, right? Of the person that they'll never meet, never touch, never have a conversation with. And so it felt so much more close to home and real to them. So what companion products could come out with your book that allows people to go deeper into the concept? Sometimes those are just lead magnets, but we'll talk about lead magnets in a minute. But I would really want you to think deeper than that, especially if each of those things have a $ connected to it. You are now upselling. So the devotional leader's guide was $10. Okay, which isn't a lot of money, but it also gets you access to 10 videos, gets you access to that, and then you also have the book that is the companion guide with it. So it doesn't have to be a high investment, but every upsell is still an upsell and it helps your bottom line. Again, that has to be done on your own website. I could publish it as an ebook on Amazon, but I don't like to give Amazon more business than they already have. They don't need it. We do. All right, any questions about that? Anybody have any ideas? Especially if you're a product-based company, Christina, you could create your own unique thing that comes out from the lavender farm just with that particular, they can't get it any other time unless they're buying it with the book. Be fun. You can do sweatshirts, hoodies, bracelets, you know, there's so much fun stuff that doesn't cost you a ton. Could be a pen that goes with it. Ooh, cool, Jennifer. I make decorated sugar cookies. That's amazing. That's awesome. And then to have that come in, oh man, that's a delight. So good. It gives people your own flavor, literally. All right, next one is influencer marketing. Influencer marketing. So this one takes some strategy. It also takes some connection. So remember, I told you some people are going to be able to do one of these things really, really well, and some people aren't. But if you have any connections and or don't have connections, but it's somebody that you have followed for a really long time who you see as an influencer in your own sphere, this is where you get to pitch and ask questions of support, okay? Especially knowing that all of our messages are oriented around faith. If they are a faith-filled, spirit-filled follower, they're gonna wanna see whatever it is catalyze. So even if they're just sharing it on social media, that's still incredible. And a lot of times people who have influencer of over 100,000 or more, they're pretty reserved on who they partner with and how they partner. So don't get offended by the no. Just can go on to the next and say, if there's anything I can do to support you, let me know, right? And go on to the next person. Keep the door open. Don't just never talk to them again, because then it looks very self-serving. So if this is the first time you've ever reached out to them, that's okay, but don't stop reaching out because they said no. That's a very important thing. I'm just gonna pause there. Just because they said no, don't stop reaching out. Because if they're a host or a conference person or any of these other things that you want access to eventually, they will circle back. Just like I said, if you've got branding and you're in their mind and you're in their forefront, they're gonna come back to you. Some of the things that I've had access to, I've been around for about 5 years in that conversation as a relationship until they actually said, hey, we want you to come speak. Hey, we want you to come do this. And I'm like, finally, Lord. But it takes time, right? It takes time. And then you get to wow them afterwards. So what I do with the influencer marketing and some of the things that I would ask of them would be, hey, on launch week, would you be willing to share my book out? I'll give you again, this is an affiliate code. If you don't do affiliate codes with that's okay. You could do a flat rate share. A flat rate share is, say, I'll give you $250 for 2 posts and email. Now, if somebody has a really large list, that's not enough money. Some influencers are making $10,000 for a post from a really large company. So they would have to really ascribe to your message. Other things that you can do from an influencer perspective, because we're doing this off social media, right, is partnering with their list. Which, do I talk about that moving forward? Because I want to make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. Yes, I do. So let's just stay in that realm of what does an influencer do? Where are they spending their time? And how can they partner with your message to get it out to their community? Going live with these people is a really clutch thing that if you can do, because what happens is it goes live to their audience at the same time as it goes live to yours. Any questions about that? Another fun thing is if you, like, let's say there's a gal by like a 𝐟𝐸𝐫𝐿 is a brand online. And I always love all of the devotionals that they put out and all of the images they put out. I always share them on my stories. Didn't know who it was for years. Because it was a faceless kind of Instagram, and recently got to have her on my podcast because she became her own standalone personal brand as she published her first book. And I had no idea that there was synchronicity. I'm like, oh my gosh, so fun. And so what if you could have them design or do a 𝐟𝐸𝐿 or whatever it is that person does that is indicative of your book, and then you have an opportunity to establish a relationship with them afterwards. And so you could hire that person to do something that they already do, and then it could go out to their community. So these are investment oriented ones, but you can do plenty that's completely for free as well. All right, this one is easy and often very much overlooked because they're trying to, and everybody is trying to go global, right? You want to hit the nations with your book. You're like, I want everybody to have this. But what about your neighbor? What about your neighbor? Have you gone to local gift boutiques and asked them if they would put your book out? Have you pitched it like you've pitched the larger names or the people on TV or magazines? Have you brought them a media kit and a press release in a really pretty little envelope and shared what it is that you're doing? Have you thought about how it could link with a shopping holiday that they're already trying to do things with? Like one of my boutiques here locally, a girlfriend I went to elementary school with, actually, she does a 𝐬𝐿entine's party every February. And so I was like, okay, I want to come in 𝐬𝐿entine's weekend and I want to host a, what do we call it? It was really cute. Oh man, what was it called? Hers was not faith oriented at all. Oh my gosh, Books and Babes maybe, or something like that. And we had like mocktails and a photo booth and meet the author and a little store up top. And it was just really fun. It was in the like second floor of her boutique. And so what could you do with someone local that could get you in front of new people? Okay. You might only be moving 3 books out of there, but that's 3 books that are local to you that you might now have a deeper connection with to be able to do something with in the future. Any questions about that? Any ideas anybody's run through on that one? Go.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I live internationally,
Yep.
and so the idea of,
Oh,
popping in locally seems a bit like crazy of an idea.
yep.
What are maybe some ways to kind of bridge that just distance gap?
Yeah, honestly, Lydia, I would think if you have people in the States, could they be your boots on the ground? Could they be like, okay, I'm in Virginia, right? Like, hey, are there a couple of boutiques that you could pop in to do this? Now, obviously that's somebody's time. So you have to think about what do they have an abundance of that wouldn't be hard for them to do. And your perception of that might be different than their reality, but it's still a request. Another thing is, instead of them having to actually do anything for you, just say, hey, can you give me 3 names of some local boutiques that you love to shop that you think I could get in touch with? And they could just get you the boutique name, and then you do all the legwork and reach out to them. Hey, my friend Tamra lives in Virginia Beach right there. I actually don't, but I would love to see if your community would be interested. I'll send you a couple of books, and I'll send you you always want to have like a, something to go with it. So if you can make in a display perspective, like an 8x10 frame of explanation and have the book, that's always the best. Sometimes they'll just want to take your book, but the more you like shelf space, for instance, that you can get, the better. That makes sense?
Yes.
Good idea? Good. Okay, great. Okay, this is what I was going to mention earlier. Have you had a book birthday party? You should have a book birthday party. Why not? Especially when we're our age, right? We stop celebrating our birthdays as much, but our book is so young and cute and colorful. So when my book turned 1, we had a birthday party at a local ice cream shop. I got all dressed up for it. We did sprinkles and balloons and all the things, and it made for such fun content and experience. And all of the people who have met me in that last year who didn't know I had a book, some people who still had known me for a long time and didn't know I had a book, they got to come out and we got to hang out and just celebrate that there's some traction on the book or new energy behind the book, because you're still living out the testimonies that you end up securing in those books all the time. And so giving a different lens on how this book has been blessed you or blessed others. At this party, you could talk about reviews that have been shared, transformations that have happened, curriculum that you've developed, all these extra things that I've mentioned, you can now share with the people that are there. This could also be a virtual. So I also had a virtual first birthday party, and people came all dressed up with like birthday hats on and stuff. It was really fun. And I just shared from a new lens that I hadn't shared from before. I did a little book reading on it, and I hit bestseller again. That's the fun part. So you can continue to hit bestseller lists, but if you're not moving books, you can't do that. And so to know that your book then on its birthday hits bestseller again, you're like, that's an awesome feat. That makes sense? Have a birthday party. It's really fun. Make it enjoyable. All right. Next one is pop culture connections. This kind of alludes to the know your calendar element, but it also alludes to things that people are used to seeing all the time. So Jesus Christ, eternally refreshing, that's the Coca-Cola, right? And so people see the branding, they see something that they're very familiar with. We could probably do a really cool like Chick-fil-A one too. And then they're connecting it to your book. Whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst. And now you're talking about how your book, and then you have your book next to a Coca-Cola bottle or something that helps a new branding, because that's what you want to see. You want to see new branding. If they're constantly hearing and it's just the cover art of your book, it's not enough to entice them to move the needle. I've seen this book 1,000 times. I really should buy it. Okay, that got me. Now I'm hooked in. Now I'm paying attention. And so what are things in pop culture? Sometimes the things that we're talking about in pop culture are spoofs. And what I mean by spoofs is like, we actually don't, as Christians, want to be a part of the world, right? We're in the world, but not of the world. And so like, I'm not going to share about Taylor Swift's recent something, but I might use some lyrics of hers and twist them to honor God, right? And be like, oh man, T Swift almost got it. And people who are still going to T Swift concerts, whether they love Jesus or not, it helps people imagine something different, and it also showcases your personality. Does this make sense? Everyone on the same page? My mic is dead. So can I go plug this in really quick so that I will be able to come out of this share screen? Give me just a second. Also with the book birthday parties, you could also partner with authors, right? Think about how any of these experiences you can partner with an author. Did their book come out the same year? Hey, calling all authors who were out who published in 2024. Let's have a 2025 birthday party together. And that be something where you're now sharing relationships, you're sharing groups, you're sharing and cross collaborating with different communities, and you're not doing it alone, which sometimes can be exhausting. Make sense? Any questions about the pop culture connections and how you could potentially play to that? Okay, cool. Obviously, you saw tons of people do this with the election, right? Tons of people. And so you can create your own. You can make it dicey or just be real clean, real crisp on what your intentions are. All right. This is one thing that we've added this year, and I have loved it so much. We've created playlists alongside our books. So our More Than Enough book came out with a More Than Enough Spotify playlist. Doesn't cost you a penny, but it's an added resource. It's really fun. It's also a great little lead magnet, which we'll talk about next. But processing, how can you turn your book into an element of worship? And so there were so many More Than Enough, or He Is Enough, or anything around enoughness or worthiness. We created into a playlist, and it became a part of the reading experience and the experience of being on the book launch team. Also, add word embellishment. What I mean by that is if you don't already have scripture written through your book because you're trying to, you're casting the net for more people to come into the kingdom and you didn't want to do it that way, that doesn't mean that you can't amplify what it is that you were saying with word through any other modality of sharing, whether it's your podcast, whether it's speaking, whether it's teaching, whether it's writing in a blog or posting on social. Does that make sense? Use the word. It's already written and it's always true, and it's always going to cut sharper than any two-edged sword, even more than our words. All right, next we've got lead magnets. So I mentioned this, and you can use the Spotify playlist that we just spoke about as a lead magnet endeavor. And what I mean by that is on your website, if you have a pop-up that comes up, hey, want to get access to the new playlist for our newest publication? Name and email here. And then you just send the link to them. Just have it on an auto-fire automation and send the link. It's a really easy, fun one that you don't have to necessarily do a ton of build out to. The lead magnet for our More Than Enough book promotion that I shared with you with the additional study guide promotion, we took out one of the weeks, which was More Than a Mom. We turned that into a free resource so they could get a taste of what that $10 lead magnet resource would be. And then people would upsell from there. And so they just wanted to get the freebie. They got that free mom one and they're like, man, this is really good. I want to go deeper into the other areas. And then they would upsell. Another one, which is our #1 lead magnet across the board, is our quiz, which is What's Your Profit Identity? Thousands of people have gone through that. And it is because people want to know about themselves and they want to be better. I believe they want to be better. And so self-identification in a quiz format is super simple. And it allows them to be seen and known and loved. And it also allows you to get feedback on who is in your community that's actually active. And so the feedback form for our profit identity tells us about speakers and authors and entrepreneurs and creative designers and supporters and retreat hosts. These are all things that I do. And so when I get to reach out to them, it becomes a very direct conversation because I'm not like scrounging like, how can I help this person? Or what do we have in common? I literally already know. And so create something that also benefits you. Does that make sense? There's a lot of resources to do these things as well from a tech perspective. This is also stuff we coach on internally. All right. Give the gift of reading, doing collaborations. Okay, let's talk about the different elements. So obviously collabs, we've talked about cohorts, the devotionals that you can do alongside people. when you have that opportunity, it just amplifies community access in a way that you couldn't do as a solo author, because you don't know those people's communities, you don't know their background, and also you now have all of these additional collaborations that you can do as far as podcast, events, retreats, all of it. It's a really beautiful way to grow your community and to get connected and not feel isolated in the author journey, which is why we recommend people do it first as number one and then do their solo experience afterwards. But the other element of Give the Gift of Reading is collaborating with other people. I mentioned this as far as the birthday party goes, but having a reading like book club type experience. Who could host a book club for you? And whether they're local or not local, virtual or not virtual, you get to come in for a specific week and serve that community. And so this is something new that we're going to be launching in 2025 that we're excited about, to be able to offer this, because we've had a lot of people ask about what could this look like as a book reading? What could this look like as a book club? And I think that anyone at any point, any life cycle of a book could activate a book club. Questions about that, how that would work? Now, oh yeah, you got some juice. Oh, good, Lydia. I'm glad you took the quiz. All right, on to the next one. We only have 2 more left, so I think Carla said she wanted to pop out. So let me go quick, Carla, for you, and then we'll leave the rest for Q&A. Okay, I mentioned the partnership email marketing. This is the most accessible way outside of social media that you can connect with other people's list. So it kind of dovetails all of the things that we've talked about, inclusive of the influencer marketing. They might not share their social media, but they might share their email list. And the variation to that is because they have their own kind of trend and thing going on in that space. Some people are really far out in their posting schedule, but their emails are different. And so is this an opportunity that you can get in front of their email marketing? Also remember, email marketing's average conversion open rate, not conversion rate, open rate is between 17 and 33%. So you would also want to ask, what's your list size? What's your open rate? What's your click-through rate? When you ask these questions, you're doing so, one, to be like, well, I'm not going to pay you this amount if I know you only have this amount of people on your list. But if you were to process through, why would I pay someone to get my book in front of someone if I'm not even going to get a kickback from that dollar, knowing that they might go buy it on Amazon? Again, I would highly recommend that that process brings them to a lead magnet, not your book sale. A lead magnet connected to your book. So now you have your name and email. And essentially at this point, you would be paying or partnering for leads. Why do people do this? I know that like the lifetime customer value, the LCV of somebody who comes into my community, depending on longevity and how long they've been there, could be upwards to $40K, right? So if someone was to give you $40,000, how much would you pay to get that lead? Pretty penny, right? Probably a pretty penny. Now, if you know that inside of your ecosphere, your business ecosphere, the average lifetime customer is $250, which is probably more regular. That's awesome. How much would you pay to get that lead? Because I'm sure you do promotions. I'm sure you say 25% off, da 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 da. Well, what if that 25% was paid in to somebody else and you now have the lead? So you need to think, how and why would I pay for someone? It's not just for them to become and get your book. It's for the other side of what does your book actually do from a traction perspective for you and for them. So if you're here listening to this now and you're like, I don't have anything else to sell them behind a book besides a book, you can grow your email list, which is really important because there might be something down the road that you do want to sell, but I would partner with people who already have email lists that you wouldn't have to pay into, because I wouldn't pay for a lead until I knew I had something I could do with said lead besides just sell them a book. Does that make sense? I just don't want to put anyone in a financial predicament that they shouldn't. For instance, when I first started, everyone told me that I should do Facebook ads. And so I did Facebook ads. This is before I had a list. This is before any of that. I probably had like 5,000 people across social media and I lost 7 grand in 3 months. And guess what? I built my list by like 100 people, but it did nothing for me because I didn't have anything to give them. I didn't have anything to sell them at that point. And so they could listen to my podcast is what they could do. Just be very mindful of what you're investing in and make sure while there's no specific order, there's no specific business plan for anybody other than God's plan for you. You don't want to be investing in things or taking anybody's advice if it's not set up on the other side of what it is that you're offering. Make sense? Because people will try and sell you everything that worked for them, but you don't know what their back system was before they sold it to you. And people I've found, don't often tell you the whole story. And so that's why I like to do that opposite. So don't do this one if you're not ready for that. Okay, next and last, of course, we know this is word of mouth and just talking about your book more. I know so many people I didn't even know have a book. I'm like, you guys, what do you mean you haven't talked about it? What do you mean I didn't know that you had this? Because what happens, especially for entrepreneurs, is we get so focused on the next thing, the new vision, the next activity, the new program, that the book is just like a check in the box of something we've done in the past. And it's not something that's constantly a companion for where we're going. And books are literally leverage points on so many different ways. And it doesn't have to be something so difficult, but you have to continue to share about it. Without it, the book will die and it will sit on a shelf and collect dust. And that's not what I want for it. And it's definitely not what I know you intentionally put the time and energy into doing. So talk about it, share about it, have other people talk about it, and it will continue to gain traction. All right, guys, that is the gist of ways to not sell your soul while selling books. So what questions do you have? Carla, I love this. I'm going to say on this is better than work. Amen. What thoughts?
I have a question for marketing. I remember hearing somewhere that they say if you have a book, connect with like chaplains in the military because
Awesome.
the government has like a big budget for faith-based to just like help keep the troops.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
have you ever heard anything about that? Or
I have not, but I would dare say just from the people in the military that I know that would be an awesome access point, especially if you have any connections in that regard. Yeah, I would definitely do that. I think that and we've talked about this even with one of the gals, and this could actually, I should add this to a slide, but like you can get into libraries, you can get into local libraries pretty easily. Generally, if you go to them and give them 2 of your books, they'll put it on the shelf and it'll be checked out. And so that's another thing for you to do to move it. But there are so many connection points as like associations. If you reach out to associations who might want to add this to their gift boxes or their goodie bags or their corporate functions, this is another way of pitching without pitching an event, and you might not be able to get there to speak. But again, more people who have your hands on the book, the better. I love that idea though. Any other question? Go ahead. Is that Carla? Yeah.
This might sound like a dumb question given the topic. Can you get to a place of overkill? I mean, I've been following an author and speaker on social media for a while, and she's great, she's funny, but now every time I see her, she's selling something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, it's almost like, I can't even find the word that I want. It just seems like that's the purpose.
Yeah, right. Versus
where's the line?
It's a great thought. And I think when you start to feel uncomfortable, then your community is probably already feeling that way.
Okay.
But I would say that if you're not pushing past your discomfort for a while, I have clients who I literally be like, okay, so your goal this month is 25K. How many times have you talked about it? And they're like, oh, I've asked 2 people. And I'm like, that doesn't work. doesn't compute. You have to know that the average person is going to say no. So if you're going to get, let's say it's a 90-10 experience to that 100-person sale, then you need to ask 9 times in order to get a yes. The very next one is going to be a yes. And so processing through, again, especially on social, only 1 to 3% of people are seeing what you're posting. If you posted once every 3 days, the likelihood that I would see your post, Carla, is maybe 1 of those 3 days. So I'm not overkill. But if you have this particular person that's every single time, that's going to turn you off. And so that's why people say value, value, offer. Value, value, offer. So you put value out into the world, put value out again to the world, then you offer, then people are like, that's a no-brainer. She brings me value every day. People who just even pray online, who will go on and just open up in prayer and that's their post. When they go to actually promote something, let's say 5 times later, it is so much more valuable for me to invest in that person because they've invested in me. And so that's what content is supposed to be. Unfortunately, most people who are in the sales perspective look to social as a platform to sell rather than a platform to serve.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because I'm losing interest in her altogether because it's not even necessarily her stuff. It's like now she's selling.
She's
Her
selling
name
other
is
people's
out
stuff.
there for all, a gazillion different products. And
Sure.
it's
And
kind
you
of
don't
sad,
really
and
even know. Yeah. And there are people, I mean, that's how some people make a living as well. So to know that she's an affiliate marketer is what it sounds like. And she's getting kickbacks, as we talked about those influencer marketers. Influencers have an ability to make a really good living if they're selling all of these things for other people. It's not something I chose to do. I didn't want to go that route because I don't like to do it that way. But yeah, it's unfortunate that's how you feel, but if she knew that, I would be curious what her feedback was on it.
Yeah, I just think there's a balance.
Definitely.
I mean, I understand it's important, but
Yep.
balance appears to have been lost.
Yep. But it's also really different, Carla, when you're selling the same thing, right? So it sounds like she's selling a bunch of different things. And so you never know, well, are you just selling that because you're making money, or are you selling that because you really believe in the product? Versus us as an author, we're selling something we've poured our whole life into. Like it's our soul that's being put out onto the line. And so oftentimes selling a book, especially when it's our soul, like the way that we write as Christians, it's actually not an easy thing to do. Like me giving you my book to read my story of becoming, it's not that glamorous. It's really hard. I walk through fire and you're going to be like, have a different perspective of me. Like I could have all this jargon in my mind, or I could say, wow, because of my testimony, I know I could break chains in Carla's life if she read this. And so to me, that is serving value, and is also making me really uncomfortable because it's not easy to put that type of work into other people's hands.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Great question though. Just sell past your point of what you would think would work, because oftentimes we are in our own mind about that, and people just truly don't know. Like, I didn't know. You're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm literally sharing that all the time. And they're like, I didn't know you had a 3rd podcast. I'm like, I can't only tell so many people at so many times, right? And it's kind of a lot. Well, I'm really excited. You guys have a couple of minutes, and I would love for you, if you have a book, this is an opportunity to share with a community that is gathered here about your book. And so whether you're writing and it's not yet out, or you have one and you have it right next to you and you can hold it up, I'd love for you guys to go around and share. And also, if you have a question about your book from a focus group perspective, this is a great time to share. I'm going to turn this off so